You weren't born afraid to say no. You didn't come into the world with this desire to please everyone, to put other people's needs above your own, to smile while everything inside you screams. This was learned. It was drilled into you from an early age with seemingly harmless phrases like, "Don't answer like that, it's ugly. You need to be nice. Don't get upset, be polite." Little by little, you understood that being accepted was more important than being whole, that swallowing her anger was better than risking conflict, that suppressing your desires was the price for not disappointing. And the most tragic of all, you believed this was virtue. But what really happened was a disconnect. You started to move away from who you are, to get closer to the image that others wanted to see. He began to build an identity based on what pleases him, what doesn't bother him, what is easy to deal with. And along the way you got lost. He lost his spontaneity, his strength, his presence, because those who live trying to fit into other people's molds inevitably break, and no one warns that once it's broken, the world won't put the pieces back together. He will continue demanding more from you. How many times have you smiled to avoid causing discomfort? How many times have you accepted absurd requests just to avoid being called selfish? How many times have you heard insults and responded with "it's okay" that hurt your soul? All this in the name of a kindness that only hurts you. You became an expert at putting out other people's fires, while your internal world turned to ashes. And do you know what the most perverse part of this is? It's just that the more you give, the more people expect. The more you donate, the more you become invisible. People don't respect people who are always available. They get used to it. They think it's normal. And when you finally try to set a limit, they react with shock, as if you're cheating on something. But it's not cheating. It's survival. It's you trying to remember who you were before you became a version shaped by the need to be loved. Because deep down, what you call kindness is often fear. Fear of being rejected. Fear of being seen as bad. Fear of being alone. And that's where Machiavelli comes in. Not as an evil manual, but as a mirror that shows you reality as it is, without decorations. He didn't tell you to become a monster. He told you to stop being blind, because the world is not driven by good intentions. He is moved by interests, by forces, by presence. And if you don't learn to play the game, you will always be a disposable piece on other people's boards. It doesn't matter how pure your heart is. If you don't know how to position yourself, you will be ignored. Machiavelli understood something that most people still resist accepting, that being good is not enough, that in many cases being good is the quickest way to be used. He wrote this centuries ago, but you only have to look around to see that it is still relevant. Look at the leaders, the influential, the respected. Are they always the kindest? Or the clearest, the most strategic, the ones who know how to say no? Society admires strength, and strength is not aggressiveness. It is clarity. Clarity of who you are, what you tolerate, what you accept. You can have the noblest heart in the world, but if you don't know how to show that you have limits, you will be tested. It will be explored, because kindness without strength is seen as weakness, and weakness in this game is an invitation to abuse. No one will stop using you just because they see that you are kind. They will only stop when they understand that by trying they may miss something, and this only happens when you learn to put consequences in your actions, when your presence is accompanied by an energy that says, "Not here." You've spent your life believing that if you were always kind, always approachable, always understanding, people would treat you the same way, that the world would return in kind. But the world is not a fair scale. It is a distorted mirror. People don't return what you offer. They give back what you demand. And if you never demand respect, never impose presence, never present consequences, you will be treated as someone easy, someone malleable, someone who can be pushed to the limit without reaction. And the cruelest thing about it all is that the more you try to be accepted, the more you erase yourself, but you disappear in the crowd. You believe that being pleasant is the way to be valued, but that is precisely what makes you forgotten, because no one remembers what doesn't bother them. Nobody respects what they don't impose. Machiavelli does not invite you to abandon your essence. He invites you to put armor on her, to understand that your kindness should not be your shield, it should be your choice. Something you give when you want, not something others take from you. You don't need to become cold, indifferent, or cruel, but we urgently need to stop being predictable. Stop being that person that everyone knows will accept everything, who will forgive everything, who will understand everything. That's not maturity, when it's submissiveness in disguise. And the world loves it when you confuse one with the other, because the more you remain silent, the more it speaks for you. The more you give in, the more he demands, and the more you try to please, the more you become a hostage to approval. But you have a choice. You can continue in this exhausting cycle, or you can, from now on, start to recover your voice, your firmness, your autonomy. You can understand once and for all that being respected is not a side effect of kindness. It is a result of the clarity with which you position yourself. You are not weak for wanting to be loved. This is human. The problem is transforming this desire into a need. When being accepted becomes an obsession, you start to betray yourself in small doses. Give in where you don't want to, shut up when you should speak, hug when you want distance. And he does. All this with a smile on his face, pretending that everything is fine, but inside, his soul is exhausted. Being nice all the time is tiring. You already noticed this. Have you ever felt that tiredness that is not physical but existential? An invisible weight that accumulates every time you say yes, meaning no. Every time you apologize for something you didn't even do. Every time you accept being someone's emotional rag just to avoid conflict. And the worst? The more you do it, the more people seem to get used to it. They don't thank you. They demand it. Because you taught them that you are always available, always understanding, always malleable. Machiavelli didn't write to turn you into a manipulator. He wrote to warn you. The world rewards those who know how to take a stand, who knows when to give in and when to impose themselves, who is not afraid to disappoint others so as not to disappoint themselves. He understood that the game of life is crueler than we like to admit, and whoever plays with innocence loses, not because they deserve it, but because they didn't understand the rules. You don't need to become a wolf, but you need to stop acting like a lamb among predators. True strength is not in attacking, but in knowing how to defend yourself, in knowing when to leave, to cut, to say enough. And that starts when you understand that your value isn't in the number of people who like you. It's in your ability to live in accordance with your truth, even if it upsets some. Many people confuse respect with friendliness. She believes that if she is always kind, approachable, and smiling, she will be admired. But respect is not born from your ability to please. It is born from your ability to set limits. People don't respect you for what you do for them, but for what you don't tolerate them doing to you. And if you never say no, never impose yourself, never make it clear how far you're going, don't expect them to do it for you. Kindness, when poorly administered, becomes an invitation to invasion. You donate, surrender, believing that you are building sincere connections. But what you build, in fact, is an unbalanced dependency relationship. You hand over 100 expecting to receive 50, and when you don't even get 10, you still feel guilty for thinking about stopping. This is self-abandonment. It's living in a dynamic where the other always comes first, where its value is measured by its usefulness, not its presence. Machiavelli saw all this clearly. He knew that image matters, that the world doesn't see your heart, it sees your posture, that everyone watches how you present yourself, how you react, how you position yourself, and they draw conclusions from that. If you never impose consequences, they conclude you have none, and those who have no consequences have no power. You become an accessory, not a protagonist, part of the setting, not the story. You need to stop thinking that being good means being always available. It doesn't mean. Being good is being fair, and that includes being fair to yourself. It includes knowing when to close the door, to cut ties, to disappoint those who expected you to continue sabotaging yourself. True respect is born when you show that behind kindness there is firmness, that your education is not submission, that your silence is not weakness, that your peace does not depend on being accepted by everyone but on being whole with yourself. The root of your frustration may not be in the people around you, but in the role you've silently assumed. The one who says you need to be okay all the time, that you need to resolve everything, keep everyone in harmony, swallow your anger, hide your pain. This character is exhausting, and the worst part, it doesn't bring you the recognition you expect. Because deep down, no one respects those who never take a stand. Nobody values those who are always available, because availability without criteria becomes banal, and when you try to change, guilt comes. Guilt for prioritizing yourself, for saying no, for moving away from those who drain your energy. You feel selfish, ungrateful, cold, but stop for a moment and reflect. Why has taking care of yourself become a burden? Who taught you that putting yourself first is wrong? It was probably a world that always wanted you domesticated, a world that praises your kindness but never respects your firmness. Machiavelli was not a villain. He was an observer of the truth. He looked at power plays with lucidity, and he understood something that few accept. People move out of interest, fear, and convenience. If you generate none of these three, you are not heard. You can scream, you can cry, you can beg, and you will be ignored, because it's not about how much you feel, it's about how much you stand for. And if you do not pose a threat to injustice, you become complicit in it. This doesn't mean you need to hurt others to be respected, but it does mean you need to stop hurting yourself to be accepted, that you need to learn to use your energy strategically, not as an endless resource available to others. True change happens when you understand that being good is not enough, and that your kindness is only valuable when it is offered out of choice, not out of fear. Have you ever noticed how some people walk into a room and immediately change the energy of the place? They don't shout, they don't beg for attention, but they just need to be present for everyone to adjust. This isn't about charisma or beauty, it's about posture, about someone who carries a silent message. I respect myself, and this is noticed. It can't be explained, it can be felt. Now think, how many times have you shaped yourself so as not to bother? How many times did you turn off your light so that others wouldn't feel dazzled? The truth is that the world won't give you space. You need to take it up. And those who do not occupy space with presence, occupy it with absence. When you adapt too much, when you shrink, when you keep apologizing for existing, you disappear. You disappear between the lines. People don't remember you because you never left something memorable. And do you know why? Because you were more concerned about pleasing than being real. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He saw that the game of influence is not won by whoever is fairer, but by whoever is more strategic. This does not mean being manipulative. It means understanding the scenario, recognizing the players and positioning yourself firmly, being someone who, even if kind, conveys the idea that exceeding certain limits will have consequences, because the presence that commands respect is built with coherence, with consistency between what you say, feel, and do. Your transformation begins when you decide to stop seeking permission to be who you are, when you stop editing your emotions, your desires, your limits, out of fear of rejection. You don't need to be accepted by everyone. You need to be respected for yourself. And that, my friend, cannot be achieved with forced kindness. It is conquered with authenticity, with courage, and with the firm refusal to continue being the supporting character of one's own life. It is common to believe that being good means never generating discomfort. That true virtue lies in being that person that everyone likes, who never creates conflict, who is always there with a ready smile and a solution to other people's problems. But what no one told you is that this idealized version of kindness is actually a control mechanism, a social model to keep you predictable, passive, and above all, manipulable. You don't have to be everyone's emotional rock. You weren't made to endure everything in silence, to carry the world on your shoulders while no one asks how you are. But the more you cancel yourself out, the more people expect it from you. And when you start to take a stand, when you start to show your pain, your anger, your limits, the first reaction is astonishment, because they got used to your submission, not your truth. Machiavelli said that appearances matter, that everyone sees what you appear to be, but few know who you really are. This is one of the most misunderstood phrases in history, but perhaps one of the truest, because the world doesn't respond to your essence. It responds to the image you project. You can have the fairest heart on the planet, but if your image is of someone fragile, hesitant, without a pulse, that's what they will treat you as. The way to break this cycle is not by becoming someone who is harsh, insensitive, or cold. It's about learning to sustain your own presence, in learning to inhabit your body with emotional authority. You don't need to shout to be heard, but you need to stop whispering when the moment demands firmness. Your voice needs to have weight, not by the strength of the volume, but by the integrity with which you live. When your word starts to have consequences, your presence starts to have respect, and that changes everything. You don't have to stop being a good person. The problem was never kindness. It was the absence of discretion. When you give the best of yourself to anyone, you trivialize the value of what you offer. Being kind, empathetic, generous, all of this is beautiful, but only when it comes from a conscious place, not from an automatic impulse that seeks approval. Because kindness born of fear is not virtue, it is self-preservation in disguise. Many people live trying to be what others expect, an emotional chameleon, always adapting to be accepted. But this effort comes at a huge price, the loss of oneself. There comes a time when you no longer know who you are. Everything became performance, trying to fit in, fear of rejection. And the most tragic, even with so much effort, you still aren't respected. Because those who mold themselves too much end up being seen as someone who has no position, and those who do not have a position have no presence. Machiavelli saw this clearly. He did not disdain morals. He just didn't believe that she alone was enough. In the real world, it is actions that build reputation, and reputation builds power. He argued that the prince, and here the prince is you, should be cunning as a fox and strong as a lion. In other words, knowing how to read the game, and also knowing how to impose yourself within it. Be kind when you want, but fearful when necessary. And this is the key that so many people don't understand. There comes a point where you have to be brutally honest with yourself. You need to look in the mirror and ask, how long will I continue to be the edited version of myself? How long will I accept being the shadow of others just to not bother them? You've spent too long living in acceptable mode, shaping speeches, disguising pain, smiling out of politeness while the soul screamed. And the question remains, was it worth it? The truth is harsh but liberating. As long as you live in fear of disappointing, you will live disappointing yourself. As long as you try to please everyone, you will be respected by no one. Because respect is born when you show that you are willing to be misunderstood, rejected, even hated. As long as you are at peace with who you are. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago, and even today, few have the courage to apply it. You don't need to be loved by everyone. It needs to be whole inside. You need to feel strong enough to say, I accept this, I don't accept this. You need to know how to leave when the environment hurts your dignity. You need to let go of this illusion that being good is enough. Because in this world, kindness without strength is just an invitation to be used. So I ask you, in all seriousness, do you want to continue being the good guy in the story? The one everyone likes but no one respects? Or are you ready to be the protagonist of your own narrative? Are you ready to be someone who imposes presence, who knows your value, who doesn't apologize for existing firmly? This is the turning point, the time when you stop asking for crumbs of acceptance and start building a life based on authenticity and respect. Don't wait for the world to set you free. It won't. You are the one who needs to break the chain of false kindness. You are the one who ultimately needs to choose between continuing to be loved or starting to be free.